Hi everyone, Kelly Mahler, occupational therapist. I have been supporting neurodivergent clients for over 20 years, and being in the field of neurodiversity, I have seen a lot of growth, and we have learned a lot that helps us to provide more meaningful supports to our loved ones, to our clients. And although we've made a lot of gains, there are still a lot of outdated beliefs out there, supports that are rooted in outdated beliefs. And we really need to keep pace with what the emerging research is saying. And most importantly, what neurodivergent voice and lived experience is telling us. So we are going to suggest 6 important shifts that every single person should ensure that they are making in order to keep pace and provide compassionate and effective supports to neurodivergence. So shift number 1, moving from being trauma blind to trauma informed. In the past, we really didn't take a lot of time to consider the trauma experiences of neurodivergence. We might have been stuck in old definitions of trauma, really considering trauma through a traditional, like what are the traditional causes of trauma, such as abuse, neglect. And we are shifting towards a place of really understanding just how traumatizing many aspects of life can be for neurodivergence. So the sensory trauma from living in a world that is so overwhelming and feels really unsafe from a sensory perspective, whether it's noises and sights and smells and whatever it is, that makes a person feel unsafe on a daily basis within their sensory world. That is the definition of trauma, chronically feeling unsafe. And so that sensory trauma is a real thing for many people. Or there could be social trauma, that feeling of nobody really getting you, or trying to fit in and not being able to figure it out. That can be very traumatizing for many people. So really considering the person's experience through a trauma lens is very important. And if you are supporting neurodivergence, to be educated in trauma-informed care is really an important shift to be making. So shift number 2 is all about moving from a compliance-driven model to a regulation-driven model. There are a lot of people still stuck in the past in these compliance-driven models, and we need to shift now. We need to stop the compliance-driven models. We know they are dangerous for many, many reasons. In our previous blog, we talked about the dangers of compliance training on the interoceptive system and self-regulation. Those compliance-based models are continually conditioning a person to ignore what it is their body is telling them that they need in order to please another person and get a reinforcer. That is so damaging. And so we know that it's also very dangerous for many other reasons. So where do we need to go? We need to get away from compliance. We need to get to a place of focus on regulation and safety. Our number 1 job is to help a person to feel safe and regulated in their bodies, in their environments. And so really focusing on how do we promote those feelings of comfort, those feelings of safety and regulation, and doing so through a co-regulation model. So not expecting a person to be able to identify and know exactly what it is they need to regulate. Many learners might already know what they need, but some learners need a little bit of co-regulation from us, that loving, compassionate support that we can provide to help them to be regulated and feeling safe in their world. Shift number 3 is all about moving from this sensory exposure, desensitization type place and moving to a place of sensory safety. In the past, the outdated belief was that if we just give you more exposure to the sensory input, you'll eventually get used to it or habituate to it or be able to tolerate it. And what we have learned from many different neurodivergence as well as research is that is not true. That is traumatic to be continually exposing someone to something that feels so unsafe to the nervous system that can feel downright painful to that person is not effective. So where do we need to go? We need to get away from that repeated exposure to uncomfortable sensations, and we need to move towards a place of sensory safety. How can we help to adapt the environment to promote those feelings of safety? How can we provide supports that maximize that person's feelings of sensory safety within their worlds? So whether that's providing noise canceling headphones or dampening the lights, or it's so unique to each individual person, but how can we get better at providing and promoting that sensory safety? So shift number 4 is moving from cognitive-based supports to interoception-based supports. And this is especially true when we're supporting mental health and self-regulation. And we hear this from so many neurodivergents, that they're seeking supports for mental health, for self-regulation. And many people are providing these high-level cognitive, rational-based programs, and that person is really not ready for that. You have to be clearly understanding how you are feeling in order to be able to manage or regulate that feeling successfully. And so we need to rewind. Those cognitive-based approaches are way too high. We need to rewind and help a person to start to begin to understand their own interoceptive experience. How is their body feeling? What do their body signals mean? Our body signals tend to be clues to our emotions, and this is a highly individualized approach. So how do we help each learner discover their own interoceptive sensations and help them to understand what those sensations mean for them? That's providing them with that foundation to be able then to take the next step. Like, now that I understand how I'm feeling, now I can take that next step in managing and nurturing the way that I feel. So we need to get more focused on interoception-based support. So the next shift number 5, is all about moving from deficit-focused to strength-based. And in the past, we were really running in a deficit-focused world. We were identifying all of the things a person was doing wrong, or the skills that they were missing, or fixing everything that needed fixing. And that was very damaging for a lot of reasons. It really sent a lot of messages, especially to my clients that were subjected to those deficit approaches. That became their identity, because everyone was constantly telling them what they were doing wrong and trying to teach them to do better, that their identity became one of, everything I do is wrong. I can't do anything right. And that's a really, really horrible way to feel about yourself. And so we need to get better at shifting towards the strengths, to focus on the strengths, to explicitly help them to identify all of the things that they're so good at, all of the things that they enjoy doing. And how do we lead with the strengths and the interests? That's where someone is going to be motivated to want to be with us, to want to learn at school. If we're focusing on all of the things that they're doing right and all of the things that they're good at and setting them up for success and capitalizing on that success. So our final shift number 6, is all about moving from theory of mind to theory of own mind. And this is something that I work on with my colleague and friend, Dr. Peter Vermeulen. That old outdated belief is theory of mind. And that's like really driving that instruction on thinking about other people. How am I making other people feel? How am I making other people think? And we're suggesting a major shift towards theory of own mind. And that is helping a person to be able to understand their own feelings and thoughts first, before they are developmentally ready to intuitively understand someone else's experience. And this is widely supported in the research. that we know that in order to understand how someone else is feeling in the moment, we recreate our own interoceptive feelings, our own interoceptive experiences. And so if you're not really clear on how you're feeling, you're missing that foundation to be able to intuitively understand how someone else is feeling. One of my clients said, I'm so busy trying to figure out how I'm feeling, I don't have resources left to figure out how everyone else is feeling. And so, but think about like how many programs and supports out there do we really have that focus and emphasize on that self-understanding, on helping that person to discover and understand their body signals, their own emotions, their own strengths, their own interests? We have very little in comparison to all of those social-based programs out there. And I'm not saying that the social-based instruction does have a time and a place. If someone is requesting it, a neurodivergent wants to learn a little bit more about the social world in order to make it predictable. But in the grand scheme of things, we need to get away from that outdated belief of all of that social theory of mind instruction and really shift and emphasize theory of own mind and helping that person to develop that self-understanding that is essential to social connection. So I hope these 6 shifts have been helpful, and I'm continually asking myself, am I keeping pace? And I know I have a long way to grow, and I hope our field continues to grow, and I hope that everyone comes along with it and really shifting so that we can provide the best supports possible. Until next time.